But that's not what Afterlives is. What was your germ of an idea for Afterlives? What kind of started it where you said, hey, this is what this book is going to be?
Well, it crystallized as Afterlives about halfway through the process. And it's important to understand the title. Afterlives is really the time after I'd written these three big biographies. As I said, I was quite, nose to the grindstone all that time, even though it was many, many years. And when I finished the third of them, I just had it with deadlines. And it was also, we'll talk about this later, a time when my partner was rather sick and the world was changing. And I just felt so distracted and so worried about things. And I didn't feel I wanted to take on a big other project. So I began to write these essays, which were kind of short takes, but they were still very much a biographical approach. So the first one was the one that's called The Second Man in the Front Row, about my grandparents in World War I, Paris. Then I wrote the one about Kyoto, and then I wrote the one about Jonathan Jackson. We'll talk about all of these, but that was over a few years, and suddenly I began to think maybe there's some way I can put all of these together in a book, and that's when I came up with the title Afterlives and the title essay Afterlives. But interestingly, those early essays had the phrase afterlife in them. Some of them did. My grandparents, they'd survived the war and they thought we're the best in a good position to stay here in Europe and help in the afterlife after the war. And in the Kyoto essay, one of the professors that I met when I was there on a special fellowship, he told me about his uncle who had been a equivalent of a kamikaze. He was supposed to power a boat into some target and give his life to the emperor. But the war ended and he never did have to, sacrifice his life, although he'd kind of considered himself dead from the moment he was given that assignment. And then he said his whole life after that, he thought of as an afterlife, decades that he lived longer. So those words were important to me. And I began to think about, how I could put together a collection of what I really thought of as sort of like short stories. I thought people can publish short story collections. Why can't I publish a collection of rather different, as I thought of it then, explorations into different periods of history and different issues that had preoccupied me? And I collected them together. And then I began to see that actually this was kind of an autobiography, a memoir. How did I become a biography? What is biography to me? And how can we understand our lives better through the lives of others?